When you're trying to make money in Delta Force operations, it's important to make sure you're getting the best performance for the price when it comes to your weapons. What I consider a budget weapon in the current economy of Delta Force is somewhere between 150 and 200,000, usually more towards the 150,000. And to some of you that may seem like a lot, but if you want to have a high extraction rate and actually be able to fight instead of do loot runs where you just avoid people, you're gonna need a real weapon. And I see a lot of people that try to run budget Uzis or budget assault rifles with very few or no attachments on them just to save money, but the truth is you're just not going to be able to compete with good players running better gear. Sure, maybe you can take out new players or people running recruit tickets, but the second that you run into a competent team using meta weapons, you're going to lose. So today I'm going over the top 3 budget weapons that can actually compete and won't let you down. As we go along, if you decide you're interested in these builds or just other builds that I might have, join the Discord where we have almost 3,000 members, where I have an entire section for my weapon builds where I post custom graphics, show the price, stats, calibrations, and a short little description on what the strengths and weaknesses and potential upgrades for the builds are. But let's jump into budget weapon number 3 on our list, the G3. Now, originally I was a G3 hater, but I have since come around to it. I don't love the gun, nor do I think it's the best in the game by any means, but when it comes to price to performance, it's kind of hard to ignore. While the fire rate and handling are a little bit on the slow side, it makes up for it by being very stable and easy to control. What it lacks in fire rate and handling, it makes up for in consistency. And this build comes in at around 170,000 reference price, but if you actually buy it on auction, sometimes it comes all the way down to like 155, 150k. This is the weapon you want to use if you're in mid-range gunfights or if you normally hold angles, because the weapon has slower handling. Even with the laser, you definitely don't want to be jumping around corners, face checking people, but if you have good positioning and you hit your shots, you're going to easily take down someone running an expensive CI-19, for example. The G3 already excels at long ranges, and due to the slower fire rate, I decided to lean into building it for extremely low recoil and to hit hard at those longer ranges, because the G3 is really the only budget weapon that can be used all the way out to 70 and 80 meters effectively. We're also running the M7 suppressor for 2 big reasons. Number 1, it's going to reduce the recoil by quite a bit, but this weapon is also extremely loud, and the M7 is cutting our gunshot sound in half from 600 meters down to 300. Now, as we go along, you're going to find that all of these budget builds are using a suppressor, and that's because going undetected, especially as a solo, is incredibly important. Can you get less recoil by using a muzzle brake? Of course, but then you're going to be giving your position away every time you take out a guard or you get into a gunfight. And a gunshot sound at 600 meters can be heard across the entire map on maps like Zero Dam and Space City. And every sweaty team that's looking to fight is immediately going to full send you. But the other reason that I don't run muzzle brakes is because they don't get rid of the muzzle flash and the smoke effects, and it's incredibly important to see what you're shooting at. The biggest downside to budget builds is that it's usually very difficult to get into those better optics, and you're usually stuck on the green level optics, which just aren't that good. But the next 2 weapons actually do get you access to what I consider the best optic in the game. Budget build number 2 on the list is going to be the SG552 build at 164,000 reference price, and this build is going to be very good on Zero Dam easy, specifically because it's running 5.56, so you're able to pick up that purple ammo off Saeed, load it into your gun, giving you a huge advantage over everybody else in the lobby. And this gun's going to excel in those close to medium range gunfights because of its fast fire rate. The challenge with the SG552 is always getting that stability under control, especially for a budget build. The 1x5 Recon optic is doing a lot of heavy lifting here with that +6 stability, making it much easier to see what we're shooting at. So if you do decide to try this build out, please don't make any changes with the optic, because the entire build is essentially built around using the Recon optic for stability. If you're going to try to swap sights just to save money, it's going to require an entirely different build. This is such a fun weapon to run because even though it can feel like you're shooting marshmallows sometimes, the fast fire rate just makes this weapon very forgiving. So if you miss a couple shots, it doesn't really increase the time to kill by very much, and it's also quite an oppressive weapon to go up against. Being on the receiving end of a fast fire rate weapon is terrifying because there aren't really a ton of extremely fast fire rate weapons in the game, or most of the time people are running guns that shoot anywhere between 600 to 750 rounds per minute, and the SG is all the way up at 906. Now, the only thing that you have to keep in mind is that the limb damage on this weapon is pretty bad at 9, but with the fast fire rate, as long as you're on target, a few limb shots won't really be the reason that you lose the fight. And when building budget weapons, there's always something that you're going to trade off. For the SG, it's not really something with the build of this weapon, it's just that it doesn't have the best range. Even with the long barrel attachment, you're only getting an effective damage range of 41 meters. Now, you can start adding some of the muzzle attachments that add more range and velocity, but they come with pretty heavy downsides that require you to spend more money into the build, and at that point it's not really a budget weapon. But if you can keep your gunfights within 40 meters, you won't really have an issue and you should be able to take down enemies no problem. And that brings us to our final budget build, the king of budget weapons. But before we do that, one thing you definitely don't want to go budget on is your headphones. Hearing small audio cues, especially in a game like Delta Force, can be the difference between winning and losing. Add that up over the course of your playtime in Delta Force, and that becomes millions gained. The ZiiGaat Crescents offer extreme levels of detail and clarity at this price point, with 2 dynamic drivers and 2 balanced armatures, spreading the workload out of producing all those different frequencies. You will hear every little pop, crackle, crunch, and footsteps in your games. They also come with this amazing travel case and tons of accessories to make sure you get the right fit out of the box. If you're interested in checking them out, links will be in the description, and if you purchase through that link, I do earn a small commission. Taking the crown of the budget build weapons is the QBZ, coming in at a 172 reference price. This QBZ does almost everything you want in a budget weapon. Controllable recoil, decent stability, decent handling, a good optic, and a max damage range of 55 meters. The only thing you're really missing at this price point is a good hip fire. I've been using the QBZ a lot recently, and I've noticed that I was really struggling in areas like the admin building because while the QBZ is very low recoil on a budget, the handling of the long barrel was making the gun feel a little bit clunky in buildings. So for that reason, I've decided to go with the short barrel, and the QBZ already has a default range of 55 meters, which is actually really good, and the next damage drop off continues all the way out to 90 meters. So we're getting a really snappy build with a sprint to fire time of 150 milliseconds and a max damage range of 55 meters. Now, if I'm being nitpicky, I'd like to see a little bit more recoil control and a little bit more stability on this build, but for that we need to either swap up to the MOE grip, which is another 22,000, or the M7 suppressor for an extra 20k. But then we lose handling and we need more attachments, and it starts to get above 225,000 really quickly, and once you start hitting that price point, again, it's not really a budget build, is it? Now I have one more thing I want to talk about before we jump into the gameplay. I know some of you are thinking, Caffrey, what about the CAR-15 or what about the AKS? And the reason those weapons are not in this video is because they are legitimately terrible. This video is about budget builds that you can actually use to go up against good players with meta weapons. The CAR-15 and the AKS have the worst time to kill in the game, and no matter how much money you spend on them, you can't fix the fact that the CAR-15 takes roughly 130 milliseconds longer to kill, and the AKS takes roughly 150 milliseconds longer to kill. Are they cheap? Absolutely. Can you kill players with them? Kind of. You'll probably be able to take out a team of players running the recruit gear tickets or maybe even blue armor. Sure, are you gonna find a Timmy or a new player running purple gear or something that he just shouldn't be? Sure, are you gonna have those one-off situations where you find somebody running purple gear or super expensive weapons and they're just not a good player? Of course, but the second that you run into a full team of good players running full purple gear and a meta weapon, you're just not gonna win that gunfight, at least majority of the time. Will there be a handful of times that you can pull it off? Sure. It's possible if you're a good player, but the vast majority of times you're gonna lose, and this game is all about extracting consistently. The more times you extract successfully, the more money you make. So if you like to go in dirt cheap and play for the massive come up, go for it. But if you're looking to win gunfights consistently, you're gonna need a real weapon. If you guys like this video and you want to check out another one, click here.